Hello, everyone. Welcome to my new podcast, Actually Following Jesus. My name is Pastor Chris. I'm a Christian pastor at a local church in Columbus, Ohio, and I have progressive views on everything from social issues to economics to politics, and I think most people in the United States or even around the world would view those two things, that is, Christianity and progressive, as antonyms of each other. That is, if you're a Christian, you're not progressive and vice versa. But actually, it is my faith and my commitment to following Jesus that has led me to my progressive views. So what I wanted to do with this podcast is talk a little bit about that and to share my perspective on things like the Bible and theology and, of course, politics and social issues from a faith standpoint. Part of what I want to do is fight back against this narrative that to be a Christian, you also have to be conservative, Republican, and part of what I also want to do is address the harm the church has done and help provide a space for folks who don't really want to have anything to do with organized religion, but maybe haven't completely given up on their faith. Now, this is just my personal belief, and it's okay if you don't share it, but I do think that there is a spiritual dimension to being human. We all actively seek to be a part of something greater than ourselves, and we're instinctively drawn to the mysterious and the mystical. And we also live our lives largely in story, and it can be incredibly fulfilling to find our place in a greater narrative. I also think that as a person, completely taking any faith or spiritual understanding out of it for a second, Jesus of Nazareth had a lot of great wisdom to share about how we ought to live our lives, of course, as recorded by the gospel writers. I know there are a few stories and sayings that are questionable, like his interaction with the Syrophoenician woman, and we'll get into those, but for the most part, I found that most people, whether they are Christian or not, agree that the general teachings of Jesus are worth paying attention to and implementing in our lives wherever possible. Although, to be frank, I find most Christians today are actively hostile to Jesus' teachings. As Gandhi once said, "I like your Christ, I do not like your Christians." Unfortunately, I think what most Christians have done today is to completely spiritualize Jesus to the point they've essentially made him an object to be worshipped rather than a person to be followed. They've turned him into a get-out-of-hell-free card, so to speak, a personal savior. The popular Christian faith essentially boils down to believe in Jesus, that is, give your intellectual assent to the idea that Jesus is the Son of God, and you get to go to heaven. But if you actually read the Gospels and read what it is Jesus says, again, reportedly, that is not at all what he taught. Instead, Jesus calls us to a radically different way of life, one that most Christians today have no interest in adhering to. More than anything else, the Jesus of the Gospels talks about the dangers of status seeking, wealth hoarding, and power grabbing. He advises not trying to make yourself great, but rather the opposite. Make yourself a servant to others. Humble yourself. He tells one rich person to go and sell everything he has and give all the money to the poor. He encourages self-sacrificial love, even for those we might consider our quote-unquote enemies. And he models it. He doesn't just talk the talk, he walks the walk. This Jesus doesn't say anything about gay people, not one word. He says, actually, to feed hungry people. He says to welcome immigrants. He provides free health care for people whom society had written off. Are you starting to see a trend? This Jesus doesn't just say, believe in me. He says, follow me. Listen to what I say and do it. Do as I do. Stand up for the marginalized and oppressed. Stop trying to take other people down in order to make yourself look better. Love and serve everyone, regardless of any particularities. Now, there's nuance here for sure, and we'll get into that in future episodes, but for now, I just want to highlight this general ethos of Jesus, which, by the way, informed the practice of famous nonviolent resistors in recent history, such as Gandhi and Martin Luther King Jr., and even Nelson Mandela. This is the Jesus I follow. And yes, I personally believe in his divinity, mostly because I feel deep within my soul there is something so profoundly godlike about these teachings. I'm drawn to them, even though from a purely Darwinian survival of the fittest standpoint, they make no sense. That is why I have the faith that I do, not because a book told me so, or because I want to go to heaven and avoid hell. Even if I didn't believe in God, I would still follow Jesus because I think it is the right thing to do. And while I would never try to force my religion on someone else or ask any of you out there to convert to Christianity because of me, I mean, your faith journey or lack thereof is yours and not mine to dictate, I do think the world would be a lot better place if everyone out there actually followed these teachings of Jesus. Of course, I would settle for all current Christians actually following Jesus. The good news, for all those out there listening who may be wondering where all the actual Jesus followers are, the good news is that I am far from the only one. There are so very many of us out there who are trying to take the life and teachings of Jesus seriously and actually live up to the label of Christian, which is a Greek word that literally means follower of Christ. Now, I know Christians of all sorts of different nationalities, ethnicities, sexual orientations, gender identities, age, ability, neurodiversity, and all the other particularities you can think of who hold these same views, just like myself. Although there are some big names out there like Nadia Bolz-Weber, John Pavlovitz, William Barber, Shane Claiborne, and the late Rachel Held Evans, you may still not have heard of any of them. We are generally not the ones with the most power and influence for reasons that by now should be fairly obvious. We are actually trying to follow Jesus, be humble, all that stuff. But we are out here, and we are trying to fight back against what I would call a co-opting of the faith. Especially now, with the rise of Trumpism, there is little, if anything, left in conservative Christianity that resembles Jesus. I don't see how a church tied to Trumpism can still hold on to any integrity going into the future. And I want to say that we really need all of you who have been disaffected, who've been turned off from the church to help us fight for its soul. But that wouldn't be fair at all. That wouldn't be fair to you. The church has hurt so many people. And maybe it has to die. And that would be incredibly painful for me because I grew up in the church. I grew up hearing and reading the old stories of the faith, and I remember being captivated by them. I remember first developing my sense of justice while reading the words of Jesus in the Gospel of Matthew. In college at Washington University in St. Louis, it was a campus ministry group that saved my life and inspired me to pursue ministry myself, even though I had also become somewhat disaffected by institutional religion at that point. But at Wake Forest Divinity School in North Carolina, I learned to love the church again, to find new meaning in the old stories, and to reaffirm my commitment to the radical life Jesus calls me to. The church has given me my livelihood, the means to support my family, but also a sense of purpose in this often chaotic world. But even so, maybe it has to die and somehow, some way be reborn as something else, something hopefully a lot closer to the vision of Jesus of Nazareth. So, no, I won't guilt trip any of you into helping me reclaim the church. That is a task for those of us who have decided to stay. But what I will do is invite you to join me in a commitment to that vision of Jesus of Nazareth, a vision that Martin Luther King Jr. called the beloved community, a society in which everyone seeks the welfare of each other, where we work together to ensure that everyone has what they need to live and to live abundantly, where we rejoice in each other's joys and share in each other's sorrows, where being great means being a willing servant to all, and where the goal always is love and reconciliation, never revenge. You don't have to join me. But the invitation stands. Whether you are Christian or atheist or agnostic or Buddhist or Muslim or Jewish or Hindu or any other faith under the sun. I'm not going to list all of them. I know there are literally thousands of them out there. Regardless of where you stand on faith, you're invited to join me in this vision. That, in a nutshell, that's where I'm coming from. That is the purpose of this podcast. I'm planning to do a variety of things with this. Sometimes I might talk about a particular Bible passage from a progressive standpoint. Sometimes I might bring on a friend or a colleague to interview about their particular experience. And sometimes, like next week, I might explore in depth a particular theological topic. So next week, I'm going to dive right into talking about my understanding of God, which is very different from the classical understanding of God. It's going to be a lot of fun for me anyway. Hopefully you'll enjoy it too if you like thinking about that sort of stuff. Even if you don't believe in God, like I said before, my goal is not to convert, just to describe. Join me next week so we can think about some of these theological issues. Next week, by the way, Monday, January 20th, when the next episode will drop, is Martin Luther King Day. And on that day, our church is actually going to be joining up with 4 other Columbus area churches for an interracial joint worship service at Woodland Christian Church. That service is going to be live streamed to their YouTube page, which is at Woodland Christian Church 7957. And that will be live streamed starting at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And I want to invite you to join us live for that service. I'm also going to be posting the sermon I gave at that same service 2 years ago on my YouTube channel, which is pastorchris.r. And you can follow me there if you're interested in hearing that and any future sermons. If you haven't already, you can also follow me on TikTok at the same name, pastorchris.r, and on Instagram at just pastorchrisr. No dot, that one was already taken. Thank you all so much for taking the time to listen. Wherever you are and however you are, just know that I firmly, profoundly believe that the God of the universe and everything in it calls you beloved. Peace be with you, my friends. Until we meet again.